the General Manager of Missoula Community Access Television, inviting you to another edition of What's Up Missoula. Today, we're going to visit with two people that make a radio program for KUFM. It's called Reflections West. And in the studio with me is Lisa Simon and David Moore. Thanks, you guys, so much for coming.
Glad to be
Lisa, I understand you are the producer and co-host. And David, you're just the glamour part of the operation,
right.
as I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's the eye candy.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the radio show's been going on for a while now, right?
2 years. We're about to start this October. We've started our third year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. It's heard on KUFM.
Yes, on Tuesday nights at 7:30. No, Tuesday nights at 8:30, and on Yellowstone at 7:01.
Interesting. It is not a long program.
It's just 5 minutes. It's short and sweet. It's a little sonic jewel, we call it.
Right. And it's on once a week. Not every day, once a week.
Just once a week.
Tuesdays.
It's bundled in with other literary programs like
that's cool.
short, selected shorts and This American Life, those ones.
Yeah. Available on the web?
It is at reflectionswest.org.
So people want to hear, are we talking really, if you're in your third year, you've done 52 times, 104 episodes of the show?
That have aired.
Yeah.
Yes. We've done 52 recordings that have aired, but
Yeah.
they've played twice.
Oh,
so
I see.
there's the 104.
But that's an awful lot.
It
and
is.
different guests each time. So like on this, we're going to talk about it a little bit, and then folks at home are going to hear some readings. Is that typical of what happens on the program?
It is.
Yeah, we, love to present these voices, and she reads either the reflection or the passage that the other writer picks for the program, and we alternate back and forth between.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
The reflection and the passage.
Now,
or I will read one or the other. Yeah.
Who was just in here is Clay, who's a student. Rolls up his pant leg to ride his bicycle.
Yeah.
Safety first.
You're right. Now, do you often have students on Reflections West?
I
as
like
readers, or?
to get students, and I go into the classrooms at UM and try to recruit students in some of the Montana Writers Live and a couple of the graduate programs, because we want to, the whole idea of Reflections West is that it's many voices describing what the West is.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure young people were included in that crowd.
Right. And is it hard to get people to read?
Well, they don't read, they write.
Oh, they're the writers. You guys are the readers.
We the readers.
So you have that polished, because, well, you've done it before, let's just
Yes,
say.
we read literature for a living.
Yeah, right. And some can do it, see, and some can't. Like, I can just pick up a page, and I can just start reading it. Our websites show that. And other people have a terrible time.
And also for producing it locally, we're drawing on writers from all over Montana and the Northwest, and to bring them to read would be really problematic, so we do the reading.
Unless, of course, you do like a telephone reading. Like the reading just needs that voice, that thin voice.
We're a very low budget show.
Right.
So that's partially why we do the reading as well, is it would just be costly to get other people to read.
Yeah. And of course the title suggests some regionality. Reflections West. Do you want to talk a little bit about what went into the title? Like, how does it reflect the West? Or is there a filter or a funnel?
Well, all the programs, we ask people to write about something about the West that interests them. So they get to pick the topic, but it has to somehow take up the West, either set in there or thematically there.
Yeah.
But then the reflection part is really important to us because it's, as university professors, we often teach literature, but often form, theory, these kind of things, and we don't get to spend as much time in reflection. That is, how does literature enrich our lives?
Yeah, we were talking before the program, Lisa and I, about how we really just love the stories, and how the way people tell stories is often the way that they survive their lives and put their lives together. And so the writers that we invite have also picked other passages that they love. And so this is an effort to try to broadcast literature and the power of storytelling in the West.
It is kind of nice that it's a radio show too. So you don't have to worry about, like, look, this went off. You don't have to worry about that kind of thing. But people can concentrate on the word in a way, with that radio. And there's something about the radio seems old-fashioned nowadays. Like, oh, you're using media and you just listen to it.
Well,
It gives
actually,
you that old-time feeling.
but that's still very important in Montana. I actually got the idea for this show talking to Greg Pape when he was the poet laureate. And he was driving all over Montana, and he was saying, I've been to towns where that was the first poetry reading they'd ever been to. And he's like talking about how much fun he had out in the road driving to rural places and reading. And he said, thank goodness there's public radio, because that's what kept me sane on all these trips. And I was just like, aha, poetry, reading, driving, and radio. So that's how I got the idea, was how do we get poetry out there, and not just in the urban parts of Montana and where the universities are, but also in the smaller towns and regions.
And I think in a way that regionalism, it helps. Poetry, if people think of poetry as this foreign animal that can only be let in at certain times, you know, after the floors have been mopped or something. But if you say Reflections West, they're like, well, I'm kind of into that because I live in the West and I feel underrepresented nationally. We're not even the third coast, we're going to say. But I feel bad I haven't looked at this sheet enough. Variety of writers. So that's a point you wanted to make, that the people you want to invite to Reflections West are not necessarily word crafters by trade. They do other stuff. They represent other walks of life.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we love the program's format in drawing on so many different types of writers. I mean, you could say everybody's a writer of their own story, and this is a way for people to bring that out. And so, as Lisa has said, we have performers, painters, museum directors, bartenders, writers as a profession, and people from all walks of life are welcome to get in touch with our website and look at the guidelines for submissions.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea.
We've had a number of ranchers write them, which have been some really interesting perspectives.
That is really wild. I did the Artists in the Schools program for MCAT years ago.
Cool.
And I was always amazed working with the high school students. I did a poetry thing where I'd call the kids out into the corridor to record their poem, and then they were to bring in 5 pictures, and then they'd number the pictures, and the lines of the poems were numbered. But sometimes, the kids would come out, and I'm going to take too much time, they would come out, and they'd be all perky and everything. And then I'd say, okay, well, why don't you try reading your poem? The sky is dark, death is everywhere, blood comes from my heart, and pools on the ground. Okay. And like, are you done?
Right.
Yeah. Are you okay? Yeah. Like, what's wrong with you? Then I'd send them back in. But I thought, well, there's the power of poetry for you. It's interesting, the takes, what people allow of their personalities to come out when they say, oh, I'm in a poetic mood. I'm doing that now.
It really does open up other parts of being alive. Poetry gives you permission in a way to explore stories that you might not tell. I think Allen Ginsberg says you should write what you won't even tell yourself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that tends for a lot of people to become alien, and people get afraid of poetry, or I don't like poetry, and indeed, part of the purpose of this program is to just bring poetry into and out of everyday life. And also, of course, we select, and our writers select passages from prose as well as poetry.
Yeah. Okay. But let's just take it up, if you wouldn't mind, from where, if people want to submit, they go to the website, this is what they see, and then what do they do to submit something?
If you want to submit, and we would love lots of different people and lots of different voices to submit, you can actually write to me, and there's a contacts window in the About Us. There should be a way to get a hold of me, and if you write to me, which is lisa@reflectionswest.org, I'll send you submission guidelines.
Oh, very nice. Okay. Because it is a short program.
It
so
is.
There's a restriction right there. You know, people can't be sending you 25-page epic poems.
No. And 250 words, which is the average length, is really short. It's 3 paragraphs.
Wow, yeah.
So
For the reflection, yeah.
we have more trouble with people sending us long things than sending us too short.
Too short. So haiku people should take encouragement. Like, oh, I've got a box. Well,
Absolutely, but I go through an editing process, and it's, we're a small program, so I work one-on-one with people to get it into a script.
well, that's really fun, though.
So I do a lot of writing tutoring.
So people, if you're watching, don't be shy. You could have a small relationship with Lisa. And she's really nice.
Consider it free writing tutoring.
Exactly.
No, but radio writing has very interesting peculiarities that David and I are becoming familiar with. Writing for the ear instead of the eye, because
Yeah.
there's all kinds of things on a page we do with our eye, like refer back, and you can't do anything like that in radio. You have to be able to catch it the first time,
Right.
or it's no good.
The time-based art, which is
Yes.
interesting, because the poem goes from literature to the time-based art of the reading, or whatever.
Yeah, more like music.
Yeah.
Which is good for developing poetry.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that website? We've just been there, and I see that you've got some stats.
Well, our web promotion has really taken off. We wanted to not have this be such a music-like, time-oriented piece, but something that we could archive and give people access to it. So we developed the website. And so the last 52 episodes are on there. People can download them as podcast. And as we developed that, I started promoting it on Facebook. And our website stats just started soaring. It was pretty neat to watch.
So you're a testament that Facebook worked for you. Like, you
It
put it
did.
on the Facebook, and then more people were directed to the website.
We even had one post that went viral, and it reached 30,000 people.
Oh, I know. It is so
Which
funny the way it works.
It was just like every 15 minutes I would look at it, and another 5,000 people had been
Right.
to
It's stunning.
It is stunning. MCAT has about 200 videos on YouTube, and the total views are about 170,000. Over 90 is one piece.
Really?
It's something about vampire undead Lego people, and that's been seen over 90,000 times. And then the rest of it, the
Wow,
Festival
yeah.
of the Book, every President's Lecture Series, the Provost Lecture Series,
Oh.
some of the most famous scientists
Yeah.
in the world have shared the balance from the
But it's-
undead Lego vampire piece.
The vampire apocalypse
Yeah.
usually takes precedence.
Well, obviously.
If there's anyone out there who would like to write a reflection on vampires,
Yeah.
we'd love to hear.
In the West, right.
Yeah,
Yes.
because Halloween's coming up.
It's
Right,
true.
there you
It'd be
go.
nice to have a little.
How far advanced are you with the
This-
show?
this
like
year-
3 weeks out, earlier?
This year, because we knew we would both be busy this fall, we recorded way ahead. So we recorded clear up till the end of January.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you're fixed for a
Yeah,
while.
so.
So you're looking for springtime musings.
Yes, I will start accepting reflections again in January, and then we'll get them into shape for reading and recording in the spring.
I know. We look ahead so fast. That's what gets the world older, but there you have it. We're just more used to it. Now, you've got sponsors on here.
Yes.
So sponsors help you make it happen.
Absolutely. We could have never, this is still a low-budget show. It's mostly just us and a couple people at KUFM and our web designer. The majority of our funds are volunteer, but after that, it's Humanities Montana. We've gotten a grant from them
Excellent.
for 3 years. And then Fact and Fiction in the UM bookstore have sponsored us for 2 years, and so has Five Valleys Land Trust.
Oh, that's great.
So those are our sponsors, and we're always looking for more.
sponsors, and they get a mention on this very successful program.
On this program and on our website, and where else? Oh, and I just have a lot of posters. I put ads in newspapers, Lively Times, and
Yeah.
places like that,
Oh,
and
that's
they
great.
get mentioned in there too.
Oh, sure.
I give as much love to our sponsors as I can.
And likely sponsor editions do seem like it would be bookstores or writers or poets who have made it, and so on, made a lot of money, for instance. It's just a thought.
Are there any of those?
I've heard of some around this town.
This week we're reading a reflection from Jim Heckel from Great Falls, Montana, where he is the retired director of the public library. Heckel has been honored many times for his work in defense of intellectual freedom and First Amendment issues. The theme of his reflection is geologic time, or seeing what is no longer there. He writes,
I was hiking on a ridgetop high above the Helena Valley with my friend Tom when a herd of yearling elk suddenly appeared ahead of us and then, just as suddenly, disappeared. After they had fled over the ridgeline, I had an eerie feeling that I could still see them in that primal portion of my mind that blurs past with present, present with future. Perhaps the elk had always been there, will always be there. Perhaps it was only Tom and I who had appeared, then dissolved away. It was the same with those lichen-laden rocks that had built this ridge, the layers riding the wild, folding tectonic plates until they had risen a mile above the valley floor, only to be battered by relentless rain and wind. Over here, layered limestone spoke of seas long since dried away, and of creatures stranger than us swimming in what is now the air, searching as we still do for nourishment. Over there were remains of a Jurassic volcano that had spewed its fire and poisonous gases and liquefied rock for millennia before regressing into the deeper bowels of the earth. As we walked after the illusionary elk, we paused without harm over once molten stone, breathed the ancient sulfur-infused air with gusto, and stepped smartly through what had once been the crushing weight of salty seas. What magnificent calamities we had escaped. What stirring adventures we had missed. I stopped and looked behind and saw nothing of ourselves. Like the elk, we had vanished from where we once were.
Heckel pairs his reflection with a poem by Paul Zarzycki, a poet known for his deep love of language and energetic, often humorous readings. But in Zarzycki's poem, Grace, we find him in a more somber mood, offering up a meditative prayer to the slow, unseen movements of nature.
He sets the theme and tone with a quotation from Natalie Goldberg that reads,
Everything is speaking if we listen. A rock just talks slower. It takes 100 years for it to say one syllable. We're not around long enough to hear what it has to say.
And here is Zarzycki's poem.
Grace. In the soft, low light up high, where love has always thrived and will forever yearn for the colorful hoover, a brushstroke of words out of the west. We still want free life. We still want fresh air. And as millenniums meander by, like birthdays to the earth, what thrill! A saffron blade of grass, blue sage, scrub oak, still brings us on our daily jaunt across the land, our daily poem, our prayer. So David and I are going to perform an episode of Reflections West from year 2 and from Jim Heckel and Paul Zarzycki. So we're going to do a little radio theater here. Today we're reading a reflection by Clay Springmeier on the unexpected dangers that exist in environments we think of as peaceful. Springmeier is a student at the University of Montana, Missoula. He recently scored his dream job as a summer backpacking and rafting guide in Glacier National Park. He writes,
"From the perspective of a teenager, not much happened in the sleepy town of Helena, Montana, where I grew up. That was largely true up until 3 days before I graduated high school, which is when a fellow student drank himself into a rage and shot 3 classmates, 1 fatally, 2 critically. This senseless event shattered my perception of the world as benevolent and even hopeful. A few years earlier, my family had floated the Smith River with 3 other families. Among us was this very friend who would become the shooter, this person who would make me question whether we ever know anyone. Throughout our river excursion, the 2 of us often worked harmoniously with the others to maneuver the rafts downstream, floating northwest through the splendor of steep-walled canyons, and again, side by side through the rolling hills of central Montana. On one of these days, someone spotted a large mountain lion halfway up a tree along the banks. The lion's paw dangled luxuriously over the branch as he watched us float past. I shivered at its power, its predatorial indifference. Everyone on the rafts remained motionless. We collectively marveled at the sight of this mighty beast at rest, looking as harmless as a kitten, or, I think now, a high school student. In the years since, I've returned many times to the outdoors, hiking the mountainous wilderness of the American and Canadian Rockies, floating the contours and unknown bends of western rivers. Earlier in these expeditions, I was looking for clarity, for explanation, maybe even closure. What I found instead is a kind of peace with the duality that exists in nature everywhere, its beauty, its destructiveness, and the unpredictable distance between.
Clay pairs his reflection with a poem by Sheila Ruble, a writer and teacher from eastern Montana. Ruble's narrative poem titled The Fishing Guide was published in Poems Across the Big Sky, an anthology of Montana poetry.
Both stories take place on the rivers of the West, and both hold unexpected danger in an otherwise calm and pristine setting.
The Fishing Guide. The fishing guide scrambled up the sandy riverbank, sore-shouldered from rowing, thinking of cold beer and big fish. Behind him, 2 clients followed like tired dogs. Soft, he thought in disdain. Just before he was slammed to the earth, his hat spinning off like a child's toy, hot white light searing his head, his hip, his heart. Just for a moment he had taken his eye off the little gray cloud on the horizon, strolled along in the yellow sunlight. It could have been you or me, our lives to be hit by a bolt from the blue, our lives going on or not, as the rain pelted down and we found ourselves lying face down in the dirt with our mouths still full of lightning.
A poem by Sheila Ruble.
Reflections West is on KUFM. It is on Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m. every Tuesday, KUFM, and on reflectionswest.org, the website. You can go there and see all of the episodes and download them as podcasts and hear them all, and remind yourself of the schedule. I'm sure it's on the website, Tuesdays at 8:30. I want to thank you for watching this edition of What's Up Missoula. If you know of a group that you would like to see on this program, give us a call at MCAT. The number is 542-6228. For MCAT, I'm Joel Baird. Thanks for watching.